All right, we're here as the Lost Rider podcast. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House, listening post of the Texas Sportsman Association. This is Herman Brune. This weekend's edition is also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club for folks who don't have a country club. All right, tell you what, we've got a gentleman here this weekend we're just going to visit with, Mr. James Bigley. And he is a conservationist. He's a realtor. He's a conservationist, and we're going to get his story and just figure out what angle he uses. We've always talked about the outdoor communications genre being such an incredibly wide swath of communications that there's anybody and everybody can be in here. If you've got any kind of an influence, any kind of a voice in the outdoors, you're somewhat of an outdoor communicator. So, and that's what Mr. Bigley is. He's got a pretty good footprint in social media, and we're gonna find out more about him. James, how you doing this morning?
Good by yourself.
Well, so far so good. All right, where are you?
I'm up in New Braunfels, Texas.
Okay, you're in New Braunfels. Yeah. All right, and what's your primary business?
So that's a little complicated. I'm a broker, real estate broker that specializes in farm and ranch properties, but also I run an advertising / conservation company, I guess you would say, that deals with social media advertising on and also coverage related to the hot topics across the United States, also related to the outdoors, conservation, development, and so forth across the United States, but also history of the United States related to the Western Wild West era, if I would say that. Mm-hmm. And then also land stewardship related to making sure that when someone purchases a property or they manage a property, they have good land stewardship practices.
All right, you're in New Braunfels. Do you do a lot of real estate type work outside of Texas?
Yes. So we do all 50 states and then also South Africa and Mexico. Depending on where we are, obviously it's a different type of operation on whatever state we're doing. But when you go out of country, it's a totally different ball game. Also,
all right,
those are all ranches. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything you do is pretty good sized ranch land.
Yes, sir. It is pretty good size, but we do a lot of clients where they have smaller ranches. 95% of the people that are buying ranches right now, or land, so to speak, they're all new landowners. So we take a somewhat of a pride of ownership related to trying to teach them and mentor them to be good land stewards related to when they buy land or a ranch.
All right. You said all 50 states, so you're familiar with the topics, the issues, the stuff that goes on, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, those.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and to give you a little background, I used to work for the U.S. government, U.S. Forest Service / the BLM back in the 1990s as a wildland firefighter, archaeologist, and also as a wildlife assistant. For the U.S. Forest Service for years, and then I got out of that. But that gave me a lot of experience in the West related to that in multiple states.
All right. Now it's just a related question, but it's a little deeper mm-hmm. question. Why? I don't understand having the Forest Service and the BLM. Is that not two duplicitous agencies?
That's a good question. So the BLM is obviously, their main job is to basically create, manage the 600 million acres they have in their portfolio, but also to provide to the public resources off that land. United States Forest Service is a little different. They obviously, manage forests and they manage harvesting of those forests, but you don't see as much, I would say, green energy and resources related to minerals and so forth on United States forest land. And on top of that, the BLM is more of what I would say, the scrub oak / arid areas versus United States Forest Service is more of your forestry and so forth.
All right, and BLM, there's some of that land that, most recently there's been talk about turning it over to the states. And, one of the arguments that people come up with is that this land is worthless. It's some of that BLM, some of that old desert land. They said it is absolutely, get out in Utah and some places in Nevada maybe. And they said, you can't do anything with it. And if the federal government loses money on it, that's one thing. They don't want to see the states lose money on it.
Right. I've heard multiple times a lot of politicians want to sell off the some of these lands. And me personally, we have enough development across the country. I don't think we need to start liquidating properties, because what's going to happen is when they start liquidating properties, that no matter if they're worthless or not, what's going to happen, just say for example, the data center situation right now, they are literally putting data centers in places that like Las Cruces, New Mexico. They're putting it in the middle of the desert, and the problem with this is like the normal citizen's not going to be able to get this property. It's going to be the investors and the people that are ultra rich, in my opinion, that are going to be able to get to these properties. And the thing nowadays is like what that land is set aside for, or for people that can't afford land, and the resources that we have to save, but also, conservation wise. And by the way, I am not a person that's, how would I say, totally, I'm in the middle related to conservation. There has to be some development and stuff, but when we get to a point where we're just developing everything, it gets, in my opinion, just not worth it.
Right. No, I mean, there's certainly set aside. It's one of the discussions we always get in. We get into the public lands deal, and I welcome the discussion because it's very difficult to understand, and especially if Texans are like, what's the big deal? The 95% of Texas is private property, so we really don't feel the same way that Montanans or Wyoming people feel about where half of their state is public lands. And they have different ideas, different opinions, different feelings about it, but I always welcome the discussion to try to understand it better. And I know one of the gentlemen that I've had the discussion with just briefly, because some of the Forest Service money was cut here not too long ago, and there were some drawdowns on some of the spending, and they were having fits about it. And I said, well, guys, nobody's ever proven that the private sector couldn't do a better job. So, we don't, until somebody can prove it one way or another, cutting spending, that's one way of cutting the fat out of stuff.
Yep. And the problem is like, I can tell you right off the bat, all public lands, there's not enough federal employees to manage those lands. There isn't, and when it comes to wildfires and everything else, it's very hard to manage when you have a very limited budget related to what you have to do on those lands and to manage them. There has to be some type of hybrid approach, but not with the point of related to liquidating properties because of it, in my opinion. We need to keep what we have because they're not making any more. And when we sell it off, we're not going to get it back. We all know that.
Right. My experience is more with wilderness areas. And, if you ever go up into any of the wilderness areas, you see pretty quick that those types of places need to be set aside. They're watersheds, and they're usually high altitude, and they're watersheds, and they're protected to be that way. So, I mean, it's when you look at the high alpine ecosystems and you see, how sensitive they are, yeah, it's a little easier to understand why that's set aside. It's easier to understand why some of the monuments and stuff are set aside. But the place these guys shoot themselves in the foot is when you have somebody like U.S. Wildlife Service turns around and does something detrimental to agriculture, like they did with the wolves and like they're currently doing with the grizzlies up in Montana and Wyoming, where they're just overpopulating a predator. And, and so when you lose credibility like in that fashion, it's hard to hang on to it any other kind of way.
And I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. In the wolf situation related to Colorado, the biggest problem with that part is that it was based off ballot box biology. And do you know what that is?
Yes, I know what it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so basically, the public asked, or not the public, the city folk asked for wolves. And the rural areas didn't want it, and then they passed that legislation, and now the Colorado Fish and Wildlife have to manage and do this program based off that voting, and it's just basically really obviously slapping them in the face and backfiring on them because of all the stuff they did, and this is happening across the Western United States related to Oregon. Oregon's coming up with some stuff that's crazy, and then ballot box biology and all that. But the public is dictating what the professionals should not need to be doing, but they're telling them what to do, even though it's not biologically, or how would I say, scientifically sound.
Right. Yep. All right, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and thank the folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back.